This is episode 28 of the After Gambling podcast. In this episode, I'll discuss my day at the National Council on Problem Gambling's National Conference and also highlight why it's so important for all of us to share our story. Hey there, and welcome to the After Gambling podcast. My name is Jamie. I am a compulsive gambler, and I'm also the host of this show. The last time I gambled was actually 8 years ago this past Sunday, July 15th of 2010. I'm recording this on the 19th of July, so yeah, I'm pretty excited. I just celebrated 8 years of clean time, and it was really nice. So I've had a lot of kind of warm wishes, so I appreciate all of those, and appreciate you for listening. So if you're following along on social media, you may know that yesterday I was invited to be a panelist at the National Council on Problem Gambling's 32nd National Conference. And the panels that I was invited to be on, they had a day-long summit on sports and gambling, sports betting and gambling. Because here in the U.S., that's obviously a hot-button topic because the Supreme Court ruling was just passed down a few months ago that made it so that each state could decide on their own if they would allow sports betting in their state. So basically, it allows for the expansion of sports betting into the states and doesn't just restrict it to Nevada. So I was invited to come and kind of share both what I thought the implications would be for my state, the state of Ohio, and then also was invited and was able to share the stage with a fellow compulsive gambler, Lisa, who is also in recovery and is doing quite well and does some training and coaching. And she's a former athlete as well. So we kind of spoke to the specific things that athletes kind of either deal with or the traits that lead us into compulsive gambling quite often. So it was a great day. Got a ton out of it. Had a lot of positive feedback at the event as well. And I'll be honest, it was also quite frustrating. There were quite a few lobbyists and some senators and folks that maybe haven't had the experience with gambling that I have had. So obviously I understand that. And going back to the switch shoes, I switch shoes with them and understand that they can't understand my position. And I just hope that just as I'm trying to understand their position, they will give us the time to fully understand our position on the topic, because I think we have a lot to bring to the table. And in fact, on the one panel, and I'll put a link to the Facebook Lives. So if you want to check out yours truly on stage, you can do that. We'll put those on. But anyways, the one topic that came up was kind of having a database that would be able to identify people that were placing too many bets. And the one thing I said to the senator was, I like the concept, but his big push is to get rid of illegal gambling. And if I can gamble illegally and not be in something that is going to be a database that's going to maybe inform either myself or family or whoever about maybe issues with problem gambling, that's going to push me to the illegal market. I don't want to be tracked. I know I've mentioned before that, and I mentioned it yesterday, when the last day I went to gamble on the riverboat, I almost walked off because they wanted to see my ID just to slide it in, because I did not want to be tracked. And I think that's a common theme that they just maybe don't understand because they weren't in our shoes. But the isolation and the links that we go to isolate and protect ourselves, and therefore to protect our addiction and allow it to continue, we go to extremes. So those are some of the things that I think it's important to have a 360 view of the topic in order to create regulation and legislation that works for everybody. And I've kind of come to grips with the fact that it's going to come and we're going to have it. And I hope that the people that are passing these bills are thinking long term and thinking legacy and history, because that's really what's at stake for them, is their legacy and how history looks back upon them. Because I've mentioned before, I think this is tobacco 2.0. And sometimes now, I guess I appreciate those people that have probably been screaming about that, or global warming, or some of these issues that now everybody's kind of coming around on. Because sometimes yesterday, I just felt like I was listening to these things and I just wanted to yell out, no, like this is not even like close to how this is, and or how gamblers think, or just overall reality. So yeah, I can appreciate that. So if you have a cause that you're fighting for and people don't seem to understand, I can empathize with that in a way that I could not previously. And that was brought to light, especially yesterday. And so on that topic, the one thing that always comes up is that it's only 1 to 2% of the population that has a gambling problem. And the senator pointed that out to me, that, hey, most people can gamble normally, but like obviously there's a couple people like you maybe. And I think he said, you may know a couple other people. And as I said, yeah, I know several people, Senator. The number of people affected, we have no clue. And I think that's the one thing I want to try to point out to people, is that we don't have any idea. The fact that our spouses don't know, the fact that our families don't know, just goes to prove that how is some researcher going to know? And in fact, I was talking to one of the researchers, and they were talking about how it's a struggle now to even just get people on the phone. And so it's hard to get data. And unfortunately, that's all working in the advantage of those that are trying to push through legislation that expands gambling without addressing the seriousness of the fallout that's going to happen. And in fact, one thing that was brought up was, it's just a different culture in the UK on sports betting. And it's just kind of what they do. And I was thinking, yeah, because they've had it for 60 years. They've developed this habit. It's like we smoke, and we have chain smokers here in the US because we've developed that habit. That doesn't mean that it's a good habit. It just means that it's a habit. So I'm going to continue to try and put my marketing and thought hat on and think of ways around this small percentage. I know the one thing, I really want to look at the data and really understand the 1 to 2%. Is that of total population? Because if that's of total population, that's a skewed result anyway. Because there's a large portion of the population that doesn't gamble at all. And so why would they be included in that percentage? It's kind of like saying, well, I mean, almost no one dies while piloting an airplane, or the number is 0.0000001% if you included everyone in the planet. I mean, that almost no one dies flying an airplane. Now, if you do that same data and only include people that have a pilot's license, that number is going to be dramatically larger, because most of us don't have a pilot's license. And if you don't have a pilot's license, you're not going to be flying a plane. And if you're not flying a plane, you can't be flying a plane when it crashes. And so I think hopefully you see my line of thought on this, is that if we're including people that are never going to gamble, or they just don't gamble, then that's skewing the results. And I think what we need to look at is the number of people with a problem of the proportion of total people that gamble, and even going further, gamble on some type of regular basis. And so I think that is a study that people would be open to just discussing. Hey, I mean, how often do you go? What's the frequency? Because with those kind of non-threatening questions, we can start to get a better idea of what the volume of actual gambling is. Because, I mean, the other thing, my shower thought of the day today was just that if you surveyed people, the gambling industry would be taking an epic loss right now. Because if you survey people, nobody loses. Everybody talks about their wins. And so if you surveyed 100 people and said, hey, what are your net gambling wins or losses? The casinos would probably be operating at a huge loss if the results that those people, the results of the things that those people told you were actually true. But we obviously know that we're complicated people and we don't tell the truth in situations that we're embarrassed about. So, like I said, I'm going to keep digging. If you have ideas on how you think we can improve the testing, or other kind of comparisons that you think might be useful in talking to legislators, because that was the one theme that I heard from a lot of the folks that work for the states, is that when they go to talk to colleges and universities, or they go to talk to legislators, they say, well, we have bigger fish to fry. And there are bigger issues out there. And until we can go to them with some kind of either anecdotal thought process or facts-based research, they're going to continue to just say, hey, this isn't a problem. And then we'll all wake up in 40 or 60 years and it'll just be part of our culture, like in the UK. And we'll have a lot of the issues that my friends in the UK are struggling with. And in Australia, the same thing. So I don't know why we need to go down that road to just kind of find out for ourselves. But maybe it's like gambling. Sometimes you have to go down that road to find out for yourselves just how bad it is. And then the other topic that came up at the end of the day was talking about youth and gambling. And I brought up the point that we need to expand what we talk about when we talk about gambling outside of sports and cards and that type of stuff to include e-gaming and skins betting. Because those are the two of the ones that obviously I see are a huge growing problem in the youth. And probably many of you that are listening to this, because definitely have a younger audience, maybe have experienced those problems yourself. And those are things that we don't typically think of. And so the thought was kind of educating the general population and parents and educators about some of those issues with the youth. And then the other one, just from, I think would be fascinating from a research point of view on youth. And it's not even so much youth and gambling, but I think gambling would be kind of, you'd be able to draw some conclusions. But there has to be research out there or research being done on the impact of social media and status with the youth. And I think you see it right now. I mean, if you listen to Gary Vaynerchuk, he always talks about, hey, every kid growing up, every 5 to 20-year-old kid right now wants to be a YouTuber. They want to be an Instagrammer. And why is that? What's the psychology? Why do they want to do that? I think a big part of it is they see that money and they see it as a quick way to get to a financial status. And so if you gain a following, then you can get these brands that offer you deals. And it's a way to elevate your status because we're all trying to elevate our status. It's a big, the United States, we're the culture that loves bigger and better. We will get bigger and better houses and cars and everything else than our friends and family. And whether we like those people or not, we're trying to impress them. There's a great line, I can't think of it right now, but along those lines that you've probably heard. So what impact is social media having? And so like I mentioned about influencers and that kind of similar thought pattern to getting money quick, maybe you could create a survey that's talking about social media, but then you also throw in what are some other ways that you view as to kind of skip steps in the social ladder to kind of move ahead, get ahead quicker, and maybe include some of the gambling things on there to see if those are things that are kind of coming up in the research that say, yeah, okay, this is a way that part of the problem is the youth view this as a shortcut to success. And then finally, on the topic of social media and youth, and this doesn't have to be youth, this can be anybody, the more that we're kind of inundated with social media posts from friends, but then also just people that aren't friends, but the celebrities in the social media channels, it really, kind of plays to our need, again, to climb the social ladder. And we see like them living life in a completely different way. And I think that can lead, obviously, to a lot of depression and kind of the feeling of not being worthy, not living a life that is successful. And so our view of all those things has been skewed quite a bit as we try to keep up with the other people that we see. And we know we're seeing their highlight film, but every day we're living our kind of blooper reel. And so that's another just part of the psychology that's out there. And so if you have these kids and adults as well that are looking and they're seeing their friends drive fancy cars or take vacations or moving into these nicer homes, it's human instinct, I believe, that we also want to have those things. And so the more that we see those things, we're trying to get there quicker. And so I think that would be interesting research to see, as a population, what ways do we view as ways to get to what we see other people have? Is it just working hard, showing up at a job every day and trying to climb the corporate ladder? Is it creating a side hustle, creating a side business? Is that what we view as the best way to get there? Is it gambling? Is it social media, becoming an influencer? And so I think there are all these very, very combustible things happening at the same time. And when we throw in gambling, that is my fear, that we are going to throw in a very combustible piece into an already very unstable population, and it's going to be a disaster because people are going to see gambling as a quick way to money. And when they start to gamble, if they have that success, if they have that significant win, as I like to talk about, it's hard to ever kind of turn back the clock before that. So those are some of my takeaways, just kind of free flowing today. This is going to maybe come out a little bit differently. Just wanted to get some of my thoughts kind of documented from yesterday while they're fresh in my mind. And other than that, cool thing, in the next couple of weeks, we're going to go over 10,000 downloads. So thank you for listening. That's kind of mind blowing. I remember when I was at like 300, and every day, every week at my GA meeting, I'd be like, hey guys, oh my gosh, we went over 400 downloads. And the next week I'd be like, we went over 500. And now it's growing by several thousand per month. And so just thanks for listening, and thanks for sharing, and thanks for the messages. And like I said, I don't know everything. I admit that. You guys probably have way more and better ideas. And as a whole, the more things that we have, reach out and share those to me. But then the other thing I will say, and this is what I'll close with, which is, I said yesterday, I mean, when I was mentioning about how the low numbers, I said, look, there's so much shame and stigma. And I said, look, I'm at 8 years and I'm just now comfortable doing this. And looking back, I wish I would have done it earlier. I don't know. I think everything has their time, and just trust your gut instinct all along. If your gut's telling you you need to tell somebody or you need to share, follow that gut instinct. If your gut instinct says, look, now's not the right time, follow that gut instinct. That one is just as important, and actually even more important. Just don't do things too quickly. But when you do, get that feeling, go with it. It's very liberating. I will say, I mean, to be honest, yesterday was one of the first days probably since I started gambling. I mean, now we're going back over 15 years that I really felt like a success. It was kind of changing and freeing and all those types of things. And not only will it help you, I shared on my Instagram, there was a great quote from Brene Brown that said, when you own your story, you get to write the ending. And I'm kind of living that right now, and I'm seeing the value in being vulnerable, sharing your shame, and getting through to the other side, because it's where freedom lives. And I bring this up because I want you to feel that. I want you to feel what I'm feeling right now, but also because we need you. I'm just one voice. And Andy who does his YouTube videos, definitely check out him. And he's just one voice. And there's so many others. I'm not going to go into a list because there are many, many others. But with each one that adds up, the number grows. And so even if you just create an anonymous account and start sharing your story on social media or on a blog, that's going to be really powerful. And it's going to help with that kind of, to combat that. Well, it's only a small percentage, and they don't really say anything. The one gentleman yesterday did mention, Keith with the National Council asked him how we can get more awareness. And he said, well, I always talk about dealing with t-shirts. He said, basically he was referring to the fact that when people show up with t-shirts on in large groups, then he has to deal with t-shirts. He has to address the issue. And so if it's just one or two people showing up with a t-shirt or showing up online and sharing their story, it doesn't have the power and doesn't get the attention that more people have. And so if at the end of this you feel like, hey, let me start an Instagram account, let me start a Twitter account, do it anonymously, do it whatever level you want, but then message me on any of those platforms and I'll start promoting you so you can get some followers, so we can kind of get that kind of viralness and get it shared. Because that's what's going to make a difference. So And so that's going to wrap up this kind of wrap-up edition of my day at the National Council on Problem Gambling's 32nd annual conference. Remember, the views expressed here are just for educational purposes. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a therapist. So please seek out the help of professionals. Gambling disorder is a serious issue, and you deserve to have the right people talking to you and helping you through this issue. So seek out the help of a professional. And then finally, music for the show is Something Elated by Broke for Free and is licensed under the Creative Commons license. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.